Well, Virginia's legislative session is over, and hundreds of bills are headed to the governor's desk, including a horrible one that would criminalize peaceful, pro-life counselors outside of abortion clinics. We'll be asking the governor to veto that and sign or amend other bills, and we're going to tell you all about it and what you can do to help. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our Vice President of Government Relations, Todd Gackey. Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. You'll notice that we have a special guest, Dr. Todd Gackey, our government relations guy at the Family Foundation. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm excited to talk to you, Todd, because session has ended, and that means hundreds of bills are headed to the governor's desk, and you are going to tell us the skinny on what bills we're asking him to veto or sign or what the deal is.
Yeah, three of my favorite words. Session is over, but a lot of work still has to be done, so we'll go through that. Yeah.
All right, I'm looking forward to hearing the highlights, what we need to be concerned about. But first, because I know you're a sports guy, I wanted to talk a little football.
Oh, you want to talk about football? Okay.
Well, you'll do most of the talking.
All right.
But I wanted to mention that the Eagles are apparently headed to the White House. The invitation has been extended.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
So we'll see if they accept. So in 2018, they declined. But hey, this is a new year, a new season. Maybe what they did is they went and reviewed some of the old clips of the Washington Redskins when they went and met with Ronald Reagan on the front lawn, and he got to throw the pass to Ricky Sanders. See, I'm a Redskins fan, so I'm not so impressed with the Eagles, but it was an impressive win. I'll give them that much. But yeah, this is a tradition that they've done for years. You know, there's been some political gamesmanship where they decline. But really, it shouldn't be. It should be for fun. It should be something exciting to do.
I mean, I think they're going to accept, but
I hope so.
I think if I was channeling our president, Victoria Cobb, and our colleague, Bruce, on the action team, I think
they're Eagles
might.
fans.
I'm channeling them right now. First, they're going to be mad they're not here while we're talking about this. But I think if they heard you say that, they would rib you for the fact that you have to go all the way back to Reagan years to talk about a Redskins moment. So
that hurts. Boy, it's like you did channel them on that one. Man. Well, I will point out that the Washington Redskins win over the Denver Broncos was the widest margin of victory in Super Bowl history. So,
here we go.
That was a more impressive win than I think this most recent Super Bowl. But, we'll leave it where it's at. I know that Victoria and Bruce are not here
don't have something to say about that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there was another football star that was at the White House recently, and everybody will remember Harrison Butker. Yep. And he's the one that was, made that speech unapologetically pro-life and got a lot of harassment. So here's a photo we're putting up of him with the president the other day. Now, I mean, it's kind of funny to me because it's the losing team is getting there before, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's nice though. I mean, he obviously has respect for the president, and he's been very outspoken, like you said, on the life issue. I think that what's been kind of disappointing has been sort of the negative reactions to that on social media.
But expected.
Yeah. I think it's just a bunch of whining, just it's a nice meeting. It's a nice gesture. He's showing respect to the president.
Yeah.
We would say that about any other person, whether it's a famous musician that goes and meets with, Bono met with President Bush years ago. I mean, you can have either political differences or similarities. You can share the same viewpoints. It's okay to go to the White House and show respect.
It used to be like that. We didn't all have to agree down the line for a famous person to go to the White House and that to be a moment of unity. But as Todd is referring to, in case some of you missed it, there was a whole liberal meltdown over the fact that this football star went and met with Trump. And we're just going to put this on the screen here. Babylon B, or not, I guess it's not the B, put this really great compilation of all the crazy ex-posts that just went nuts over this. So we're putting this up on the screen.
Yeah. I find it interesting, all of their whining that's going on. And at this time, President Trump has been issuing positive executive orders to protect female sports, to protect the innocence of children. I mean, he's doing some really incredible things. I think this is just them lashing out, just finding something to complain about. Instead of highlighting just something interesting, a athlete going in and meeting the president. That's basically what it is.
All right, well, getting straight into today's topic, your team has survived another General Assembly session.
Yes.
And that means you have been at the Capitol day and night reviewing hundreds of bills. So are you glad it's over?
Yeah, it was a long 45 days. Like I mentioned, session is over. That's one of our favorite phrases around here. We made it through. It started out really rough because of the abortion amendment and some of the heavy issues. I will say, though, it as bad as it was, I think it could have been a lot worse.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, really.
That's a glass half full perspective.
It kind of is, because I think that the majority leadership really kind of zeroed in on what they wanted to focus on. They knew it's an election year coming up, so they tried to tell their members, don't bring any truly crazy bills. It's got to stay on a certain message. Let's not have any wild, outlandish comments and arguments on the floor. I mean, they had some wacky things that they would bring up. But by and large, they stuck to the script.
Well, I get a close-up view of you guys' coping mechanisms during the frenzied pace, and we're just going to put one of those views on the screen here, and this is what the policy door looks like. You will see they have what they call, I guess it's their kill list, a list of bills that they are able to celebrate that they bombed or helped kill. This is the kill list, essentially.
Yeah, and to be fair, some of them failed on their own. We didn't really have to do on some of them a whole lot.
But it's still a defeat.
But it's still a defeat
that
we celebrate, so you have to have some levity in the office. You
got to have some dark humor.
Yeah, because if you don't, then you become so serious and you forget about having some joy. I mean, it's kind of weird when you're talking about having defeated or killed bills on the door, but you got to have some joy in there, because as Christians we believe in joy, and we believe in that our joy comes from the Lord. It comes from the Lord, and we can't let these heavy issues get us down. So it's a little humor. Yeah.
So just to give people perspective for why this is needed is because the Democrats, they are in control of both chambers, and they have, Todd was explaining to me, they have this strategy of just flooding the system with horrible bills.
Yeah.
So explain, why do they have that strategy? Tell us about why that happens, that they're just flooding it.
Yeah. So I think that they what they do is they put in a number of bills that satisfy sort of their message, kind of goes along with their message of issues of abortion, the whole abortifacients, all of these transgender issues, the DEI, all of that. They put that in there in order to get these legislators on the record of having to vote on these bills, and because they know it's with an election coming up. And then it forces you to have to defend on all different fronts. And so, but this year we were able to find some success, which is why we put a whole bunch of defeats on that doors to celebrate those wins. Yes.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. So their strategy is to flood it so they can get some things through, because there's just so much to oppose.
Yeah.
But then they are also playing a political game.
Yeah.
Well, they know the governor's going to veto a lot of these bills, and so they're trying to put people in politically awkward positions. And this reminds me what they did to Winsome Sears. If you can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, it was a bill dealing with contraception, a right to contraceptive that would include abortifacients, abortion-causing drugs. And what they did is when the bill was on the floor, a Democrat walked off or did not vote, so it ended up in a tie. The bill goes to the lieutenant governor, who has to break that tie. They get her on record for voting in what they're arguing against contraceptives.
Which we would say is abortifacient.
Which we say, yes. Yeah. And then what happens is a legislator comes back and says, can we reconsider that vote because somebody was not on the floor or didn't vote?
That's just as maddening.
And then they get to vote for it. They get to then get credit for voting for a bill, and the lieutenant governor is on record for opposing the bill for political purposes.
I mean, do Republicans do stuff like this, or is this more of a Democrat tactic?
I can't say for certain the Republican has never done done that. I mean,
But I don't remember it being used like that.
Yeah, it's never. I don't recall that being that blatant.
Yeah.
And this isn't the first time. It happened last year as well
Yeah,
on
they did
another
it last
bill.
year. Yeah.
So that just goes to show this year that those were the hot button issues, and they're trying to do everything they can to get people on record.
Because November 2025 elections.
Yeah. The House of Delegates will be up, and then you're going to have a gubernatorial race, and so they're trying to get people on record.
All right, politics.
Yeah,
So let's start out with some of the good news since we're talking about the Kill Bill list.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think was the most important bill that you felt you were able to help defeat this year.
I think the one for homeschoolers. I think Senate Bill 1031, which did not pass. It made it out of a education committee as a study. So it went through different iterations, right? And each time it kept getting worse until it ended up into just being a study of homeschooling. That went off to the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee where it got defeated. That was a huge win because it wasn't just about homeschooling or education. It was about parental rights. It was about religious liberty. It's about what are the values that we hold dear and we think that parents and families should that they should be afforded. That they could direct the upbringing and education of their children. I think that one had so many implications, and it really kind of illustrates what one side views as important, which is a one-size-fits-all state-run education system where they get to dictate how families and parents can educate their children versus parents making those decisions.
Yeah. And on these religious freedom aspects, where you have legislators trying to kind of get the camel's nose under the tent and be able to weigh in on whether someone's religious freedom exemption request is valid or not, that has to do also with protecting that because they never stop there.
Yeah.
And we kind of saw the same thing with this bill on church security that didn't get talked about much, but people don't really talk about, well, what happens if the government's making these decisions for churches? If you could just say something real quick about that.
Yeah, there was a bill this year that would have required any church that has some type of security program where you have security people on staff or working for the church, that they'd have to go through some type of mandatory training. And so here you have government that's going to be dictating to a religious place of worship how they're supposed to conduct security. Now, we want every place of worship to be secure and for the people, the congregants of the church to feel safe, but we shouldn't have the government telling the church how it should be done. So we were able to get the patron and the committee to turn this into a bill that would essentially make available to them the best practices for security. So they can get a document and say, oh, here's how it should be done. Let's see if we can implement some of these.
Because we saw how it was handled with COVID with churches.
You're right.
So that's a less, So there were lots of interesting things like that wasn't really covered. I'm going to throw one more at you. Okay. I saw something because Todd's team put together this excellent summary of what happened in session and what we need to be communicating to the governor about. And we're going to put that link in the show notes description. But for YouTube, that'll be on our YouTube. You can go and get that. But I saw this one thing about that they were expanding. You have to correct me if I'm wrong because I wasn't planning to bring this up. So this is they are expanding the number of employees. Is it that the Values Act applies to?
Yeah, there's a bill in there that would it actually reduces the number of employees.
Oh, it reduces
from 15 to 5.
Okay.
And so essentially, as you under the Virginia Values Act or the Virginia Human Rights Act, an employer is defined as having a certain number of employees. And so this bill reduces that number from 15 to 5.
So real quick, that's the act that threatens people's religious freedoms if you don't comply with this LGBTQ agenda in the way you're running your business or your church.
Yes, it's part of it's sort of in the definition code section defining what an employer is.
So by making it smaller, is that further encroachment of the government into little places?
Right. So not only is it just bad business? It's not good for entrepreneurs. It's not good for small businesses looking to grow and to not have to go through a bunch of red tape. But now you're setting up smaller companies to possibly face some type of lawsuit or complaint under the Human Rights Act in Virginia. So this is just not good policy for Virginia. All right, we've got it at 15, but it goes to show they're just trying to
they
further.
They don't stop. That is my point,
right.
exactly.
They don't stop.
Yeah.
They had 15. That's not good enough.
That's why we oppose what sometimes people, why are you opposing this? But it's that encroachment.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, let's go back to good news.
Okay.
Another one people might not know about is the defeat of neighborhood slot machines.
Oh, yes. That was a great win. It was a bill that was introduced during session as a standalone piece of legislation. That bill failed through the committee process. The Senate had also included a budget amendment to approve neighborhood slot machines and regulate them during the conference report. So both the Senate and the House come together, they debate the budget, decide what goes in there, and that was not included in the conference report.
So they tried two different places, regular legislation and budget, and it was defeated. That's a pretty big deal because we've been in a big battle with neighborhood slot machines. Yeah. Why do you think that was able to be defeated?
I think one is the governor said in his State of the Commonwealth address that he didn't want to go down this road of expanding gambling without some type of gaming commission in place, which is a whole nother issue, probably not for this, but they did try to set up a gaming commission to regulate it all. Why do you expand gaming if you can't get the oversight commission through the legislative process? I think that, and I think that there's still a lot of citizen disapproval of this. And it's just a hotly contested issue, especially in the Northern Virginia area.
Because people don't want their neighborhoods ruined.
No. We've talked about it before. When you have a casino, everything is at least in that one location.
Yeah.
With neighborhood slot machines, what it does is it disperses it out into the neighborhoods, into the communities. So it brings gambling right into your backyard.
All right. Speaking of casinos, there was a defeat on that front. I know we talked about it a little bit before, but just wanted to let you address that again one more.
The legislation failed in the House. We were able to speak to it. Ironically, we were on the same side as...
So tell us what it was about, like Fairfax.
So it was a bill that would have added Fairfax County as a sixth location for a casino, keeping in mind that in 2019 and 2020, they said they only won in 5. That was a whole debate.
Now we're up to 6.
Now we're up to 6. They're shooting for 6. It failed in a House committee. The big thing was that Senator Jennifer Boysko, Democrat on the Senate side, came and spoke in opposition to the bill in the House committee, along with me, which was a shock to me. But we'll take the help any way we can get it, any way we can stop this gambling expansion.
And this is fascinating because is she one of the sponsors of the abortion amendment? So
she is the sponsor of the Senate.
Sponsor. This is a very left-wing person. In there testifying alongside, in the same line with Todd against the casino.
Yeah, and it goes to show, not in my backyard is a big thing in policy making and politics. And you can be as on one end of the political spectrum or the other. But if it comes to your backyard, you're going to defend it. You're going to defend your citizens. And that's what she did. She made the argument that she was protecting the citizens in her area from another casino. And
this also goes to show that the Democrats punish their own. Tell us about that.
Yeah, after she did that, she was then removed as chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, and then was removed from, I believe it was the Rules Committee. So there was some retribution that happened.
That's interesting.
Because she spoke in opposition, not just to a member of her own caucus, which was Senator Scott Surville, but he's also the majority leader too.
Oh.
So that was not and I think you could even kind of tell on the members on the committee, like, this is not a good idea, don't do this. But she went through with it, and she unfortunately had to be removed from her committee. So
that's interesting to me because it shows how the left they keep their people in line. I'm looking at this kill list here, and here's one that I actually didn't know about, but it sounds outrageous. It says, we help defeat a bill to require gender X option on all forms used by state agencies. So is this like where you can have an X gender on driver's license kind of thing?
Yeah. It's a ridiculous bill. It would have required, any state forms, any state documents to include in there a gender X option for someone who doesn't identify as male or female. Would have required them to revise all forms in the state government. So they would have had to methodically go through and revise those forms in order to apply this. It would have been a huge cost to the state, and the bill failed.
So you can go and check I'm X gender. Do we even know what that means?
No.
Okay.
I think it's just a non-binary.
I just don't
option.
understand from a security point of view.
Yeah.
How that could even work. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from a public safety standpoint too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Every once in a while you get these dumb bills that come through. This is one. I think it came last year as well, and it didn't make it out of committee. But they keep trying. They keep trying. We'll give them an A for effort.
All right. Well, keep us moving here. A lot to get through. So. It looks like another one you put on the victory list, even though this was kind of a de facto defeat, was this assisted suicide. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so if you recall, last year there was a bill to legalize physician-assisted suicide, and it made it through the Senate. But in the House, it got to almost the last day of voting, and they just didn't have enough votes. That is the Democrat majority. Did not have. All the Republicans voted against it. Democrats could not come up with enough votes. Mm-hmm. This year, they didn't even introduce a bill. Mm-hmm. So that suggests that there's still some uneasiness with this issue to the point where they can't even bring the bill because no one is going to commit to agreeing to sign on to this.
Yeah, and just to remind our viewers, this fits within our viewpoint on biblical principle of protecting life from the womb to the grave. Mm-hmm. That even toward the end of life, the elderly, they are still sacred lives made in God's image. You know, even if they're not, how you might socialistically measure whether someone is productive, right, if they have ailments and things, and so. These are measures that are trying to allow legalized assisted suicide when people are deemed, not contributing or they feel depressed.
Right. And, It kind of goes back to what we talked about the camel's nose under the tent. Yeah. And you like the employee issue. You have a certain set number of employees. Well, then field goal post gets moved. Yeah. And this is that same situation where, all right, you get physician-assisted suicide introduced, passed, then you become like your neighbors in Canada where it gets expanded. And if you are deemed not able to contribute to society, well, then you're expendable. Right,
exactly. And, I think this is a pretty big deal that they didn't even bring it up. I take encouragement from that.
It's a very big deal. It's huge.
All right. Kind of shifting gears entirely here. How about on the tax cut front?
Yeah. So we'll take rebates, one-time rebates, $200 for an individual, $400 for married couples. That's a one-time rebate. Certainly, it would have been nice to have seen substantial tax cuts in the code. I know that the governor tried to get the car tax eliminated, some other, cuts, through the legislative process. They did also increase the standard deduction, and so they did that through the budget as well. So then that means the next go around, on the budget debate, they're going to have to try and address that again. Those are positive. We would like to see maybe something more in the line of lowering some of the tax rates, expanding the base, lower the rate to really help families. So I think this is a modest, a modest help to families. I don't know how far $200 or $400 will go.
So true. It might buy several boxes of eggs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can get a couple of cartons of eggs with that.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because we know that Virginia continues to have this unprecedented surplus, and yet they just won't give any of that back to us or allow the governor to proceed with that. So,
and it's a view of, okay, we have a surplus, and you have at the conservative side, which would say, let's reduce taxes and make sure more of it goes back into the pockets of the hardworking families. The other side says, oh, we have a surplus. What else can we spend it on? And you have a ballooning budget that is just growing way too fast on things that can be cut, that is just non-essential. And so I think that's going to be that ideological debate kind of moving forward. And until things change in the General Assembly, the composition of it, until you have more fiscal conservatives in there who are going to help, cut taxes, lower rates, put more money into the pockets of families, this is what we're going to be struggling with.
All right. Let's shift to covering some of the bad stuff that did get through.
Yeah.
And there was some important things here that the governor is not able to veto. Tell us about that.
Well, you're probably referring then to the abortion and the marriage amendments. Those are resolutions. And so you have one, the abortion amendment, that initiates the process of amending the state constitution to enshrine unlimited abortion, abortion by anyone at any point in the gestation of the child without any standards whatsoever to protect the life of the mother. You mean by anyone?
They don't have to be a medical doctor.
That's right, okay. Yeah. And then you also have the marriage repeal and replace. So it repeals the current language that says that marriage is between one man and one woman, with language that really doesn't define what marriage is, but it says that you can't prevent people who are same-sex getting married, and you can't do it on the basis of gender either. So they inject gender ideology into this amendment, this new language. So that really opens the door up to all of the issues dealing with gender. Now you've given it legitimacy in the Constitution, so it could be used to protect boys and female sports. So these resolutions do not go to the governor. The governor cannot veto these. But what it has to do is come back in the next General Assembly session, be passed again by the General Assembly, and then it would go to the ballot for approval by the citizens.
Again, this November 2025 election, really important.
Yeah, huge.
All right. Well, since we're on kind of the abortion front of things, there was a really atrocious bill. Tell us about the FACE Act going through.
So this is a bill that's carried by Senator Scott Surville.
Again, the Fairfax casino guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so this bill would essentially create a bubble zone around abortion clinics. So you can't approach someone within 8 feet within a certain radius of an abortion clinic or facility to just hand them a brochure or to pray with them or just to give them some words of encouragement. And this is really just targeting people who peacefully want to pray outside of an abortion clinic, who want to hopefully counsel someone away from that, give them an alternative to abortion. And what it's really doing is it's targeting peaceful protesters, peaceful counselors, while at the same time you have pregnancy resource centers that are being vandalized and threatened by these militant abortion groups that are out there, and we have them right in Virginia. It's happened in Virginia, Northern Virginia, Lynchburg. Yeah. We had 2 pregnancy resource centers that were vandalized. So we have a situation where you're going after the people who pray, but you're not willing to protect the people who are, or you're willing to let the people who want to cause harm and threaten people go free.
Yeah, and I think what Trump has been doing puts this in sharp relief contrast when he's been pardoning grandmothers, that have been sentenced to prison for being too close to, or praying outside the door of an abortion clinic. And here we're going the opposite direction, sending this to the governor's desk to criminalize.
And Senator Scott Surville raised that point. He said, if the president's going to do this, then we need to take action here in Virginia.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, I think the bigger picture is that they are trying to cover pushing through extremism on the abortion issue at all levels. So you've got them pushing this at the constitutional level and then not stopping there, just making sure it's covered all the way down into the code. Yeah. Because they, in addition to the abortion amendment and this FACE Act, they're also pushing through all these other bills. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just wanted to mention, you mentioned earlier what they tried to trap Winsome Sears on this, what they're calling a contraception protection, but this does involve including abortion-causing drugs and forcing, I guess the insurance part would threaten religious freedoms.
So you have one side, which is the right to so-called contraceptive, which we're not opposed to contraceptives. It's only when it engages abortion-causing drugs.
Yeah.
But the other side then is also requiring providers to cover those. And so without any type of religious or conscience protections for providers who...
And then you get into Catholic groups.
That's right. Yeah. And Little Sisters of the Poor, Supreme Court case, and Hobby Lobby and all of that.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot to talk to the governor about.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So what can people do if they want to contact the governor on what they would like him to veto or support? I mean, I guess there's fewer to support.
Sure.
But,
yeah. I mean, there are some good bills that we definitely want to make sure he supports, like the parental access to minors' online medical records. That
protecting parents able to get their kids' medical records.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is great legislation that we helped initiate.
Yeah.
So we want him to sign that. We're actually supportive of the 24-hour parental notification bill. There was 2 versions, and
let me back you up on that.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're talking about is parents being notified if there are drug overdoses, especially with this fentanyl happening on their campus, and something went through about 24-hour notice.
Yeah.
So what do you want people to tell the governor about that?
We're supportive of both the House and the Senate version. They went to conference, and the House version seems to appear to have kind of won out. We're supportive of the Senate version, which was cleaner. What we say is cleaner. It didn't have some of these delay provisions in there, and it didn't include private schools. They have their own procedures.
Okay.
Let them work that out with their accrediting agencies. But what we want to see is if the governor would be able to suggest the Senate version, to amend it to look like that. Now, we think that the House version is still a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
We support it. I think it's still giving parents some notification when these things are happening on campus so they can have good conversations with their kids. So that's one that we support, but we'd like to see maybe a tweak to it.
And with the Senate one is a little more prompt. Is that true?
Yeah, it was.
The 24-hour turnaround.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice if we did more than a baby step each year on this issue. So, it'd be good if the governor was able to tighten that up a little with an amendment.
Yeah.
All right. So one really valuable service that Todd's team does, he won't brag about himself, but I can brag about you, and that they provide analysis to the governor's team on especially amendments that can be made. So just to kind of summarize this, and this is going to be on an online action center that you will be able to access. But just to kind of summarize 2 things you can ask the governor to sign would be this: parents being guaranteed protecting their access to their kids' medical records online, and then this tightening up this 24-hour notice on if drug overdose happen on campus. So those are 2 good things you can weigh in on.
Yeah.
I kind of skipped, but what are we asking him to veto, just to summarize? So maybe the FACE Act, obviously.
Yeah, FACE Act. Those bills that would create a right to abortion-causing drugs.
All the abortion stuff.
Yeah, all of that. There's some bills in there that also would create access to telehealth services at school, on school premises, without parents having ability to be involved in that. And then there's some bills that would also address or kind of rope in DEI.
Okay.
And so we've seen certainly at the federal level, and that was part of the whole conversation this most recent election, right, was on this issue. They still push that at the state level. So there's some bills that would push the DEI
and as
issue.
Usual, they will be pushing through the commercialization, pot shop on every corner of marijuana, more gambling stuff. So all this is going to be summarized on this action center for people.
Yeah, the governor's action page is what we call it.
Yeah.
And so they can go on there. They can look at the bills. They're grouped according to the categories, whether it's religious liberty, sanctity of life. And there's a link where they can actually click on it and then write to their governor and ask him to take whatever action, whether it's to sign it, to amend it, to veto the bill.
And it really does help for the governor to hear from people because it helps provide support for him to take actions that he might be getting pushback from left-wing activists. So it's important that we support him in this. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't say anything, and by we, I mean the people, if the people don't say anything, then they're going to think, well, nobody really is interested in this issue, and so I can sign this bill or I can let it become law. And this is your chance to let your voice be heard.
All right. Well, I think we've sort of done the fire hose spray, and I really picked your brain hard. So hopefully I didn't make you feel like you're back in session.
No, that's good.
So we'll just kind of wrap up there, unless you have anything else you want to throw in real quick.
No, I just, go to the governor's action page.
Yeah. FamilyFoundation.org if you're listening instead of watching on YouTube. FamilyFoundation.org.
And we're still going to update people on what's happening with the actions he does take by the end of March.
Okay.
And then you have...
Yeah, we should say that. He has a deadline. Yeah. When is the deadline?
I believe that it's by midnight on March 24th for most of these bills. Right. I don't think there's any that will be before that. So by the end of March, but he can take action on them at any time. Once they hit his desk, he could sign, veto, or amend right away.
All right, so we'll be keeping you up to date. I'm sure I'll have Todd back on this. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And remember, everyone, we are stronger when we speak together. That certainly applies in this case. And if you want other people to know about what to do on these issues, be sure and share our YouTube playlist. Look for Speak Up Virginia. Just share that playlist if you're on Apple or Spotify. Remember that you can give us that 5-star review to help amplify the program to others. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.